Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We are live. And how you doing? You're not the early bird you used to be.
No, I was here. You weren't here.
When?
It won't let you in if you're not connected. Then you have to wait until the host comes in or connects you.
What time was that?
About 10 of.
No, I was here.
Well, that's what it said. It was just a black screen, and you have to wait till the host connects you. That's what it said.
Huh.
That's why I got up and walked away for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, wow. No, I've been here. And when somebody comes in, I hear a little bell, like a doorbell.
Yeah.
And when I just let you in, that's when I heard the bell. So, anyway, glad to see you.
Yeah. I can't believe it's only Wednesday. I'm so tired. It's like it's Friday.
I know.
I think it's the weather. The weather's, is so up and down.
Yeah.
I think
Hey, Rick.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
How you doing?
Hi. How you doing, Rick?
Can't complain. How about you?
I'm with you. Can't complain.
Yeah. We're just talking about being tired. So I didn't, you guys can see from the agenda, I didn't do a whole lot this week, and that's because I'm tired.
That's because you did too much Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Too much.
Yeah, I, for my other book group, Rick, I was the we share facilitation in that group. And it was my turn yesterday, and I wrote 29 questions.
Oh, that's a lot of work.
Right back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I kept trying to get myself in the mood to do this chapter, and I was having a hard time getting there. So
it wasn't the easiest one, to be honest with you.
Right. There was a lot going on in this chapter, a lot. And, I like the information that she's sharing, but I'm not a real big fan, I think, of her writing style. And I think it's because I'm so organized in my head. I mean, you see how I do my agendas. I'm totally into the outline and so to me, if you're going to present whatever this is, 35 pages of small print, on all these different topics, you need some subheads in here. And I think if she were more into that, and she may be a better writer because, this is years ago, and I have heard her own criticisms of this book. But I think that if she used more of an outline style, it would help her focus on, and what exactly is the point,
Well, no, I get it.
I think
she's a victim of what epidemiologists are always criticized for all over the place.
Yeah.
An epidemiologist will talk to you about the genetic structure of a virus and then all of a sudden say, oh, gloves, they need gloves, people need gloves because they go into transportation, but the virus mutated, and you're like, wait, what? Wait, you were talking about different scales of the same disease all in one sentence. I'm sorry, you gotta slow down.
Yeah,
it's like Rain Man.
Researching in Sierra Leone and Ebola in the Sudan and the United Nations and all this stuff going on. Yeah.
It reminds me of some philosophy books where it's only for students, like advanced. So they don't even bother anymore defining the terms they use. They speak like the books, and it's they use concepts. When you try to deconstruct the sentence, in the end, you realize that I did that for years when I was in philosophy. Wait, the sentence is not properly written regardless of, but you get lost in all those technical terms and don't realize that you're not writing well anymore. That your sentences that are deconstructed basically don't mean anything. So.
And she shares so many details about people's names and details about them. So in one chapter, she may give you their name and their title, and then 3 chapters later, she's like, "Oh, Carl," and I'm like, "Who?
Who the hell is?" What Carl? Wait.
Yeah.
I found sometimes she can throw you because she gives a little bit too much information. A little bit too much. She gave, in this chapter particularly, she gave more information about everything else other than the plague. And I'm looking at the cover of the book, and I closed it up, and I said, "Well, okay. It says the coming of the plague. Okay. Well, when we going to start talking about the plague? Okay, because we talk about Idi Amin, we talk about the IMF, we talk about WTO, we talk about WHO, all
the World Bank.
Right. That's what I said. The IMF, the WTO, the WHO, the whole 10 yards. This is not we're not on Wall Street. It's not a business class. Okay. Then we went on.
Actually, it is relevant. I mean, these are all of the factors impinging on the ability to provide public health.
Well,
but I was struggling throughout the chapter to try to make the connection because she's not making that plain.
It's like implicit, like, you know what I'm talking about. No, we don't.
Well, no,
why is the UN here? What's going on?
I thought it was relevant. That's not the point, because we know, I would assume, even if you didn't know, you would, you might want to look it up, what the IMF, what their primary purpose is, what the WTO's primary purpose is. Yeah, it all plays into this. I'm just saying, in that particular chapter, it was more about that. And I think you didn't need all that to really lead up to, let's talk about the plague. Let's talk about how they're going to eradicate it. Let's talk about being in the backwoods of so-and-so in Zaire and, what's going on here. So that's what I was saying. No, it's all relevant, but you only can put so much in the book. Okay? And then and it's the coming of the plague. So in all those pages, I want to hear more about the plague. You can set it up, put the history in there, but I want to know about the plague. So that's what I'm saying. Everything is relevant, but I think she just got carried away. Because, Idi Amin is interesting. I follow him since the 70s. He is barbaric. He's a monster. I mean, he's like something that you wouldn't even, he reminds me of Trump. I don't know if Trump practices cannibalism though, but who knows?
If
But
people tell him it's good for his ratings, he'll probably. I'm sure if you asked Donald Trump if one of his friends had been caught being a cannibal, what he thought about cannibalism, he said, "Well, they're very fine people.
very fine people,
You,
and they like me, and they
I
like
don't
me.
do it, but I respect it.
But I respect it, and they like me, and they like me. That's all that counts.
Exactly.
I go to the cannibal party. I don't eat no people, but I'm there.
Let's do our introductions. Venita, you want to get it started?
My name is Venita Walker. I'm joining you from Cromwell, Connecticut. Of course, no one knows where that is. I don't even know where it is.
What's the biggest city near Cromwell?
We don't have a big city. We're not in New York, okay? So we don't have a big city. We have Hartford. And if I start out now, I can be there in about an hour or a couple hours because it's only about 13 minutes away, the center of Hartford. We have New Haven. If I start out now, it's about 19 minutes in my car, so it's a couple hours walk if I'm walking briskly. No, not me. If one of those people that like to do that is walking briskly. I will show up tomorrow sometimes, okay? Or they'll find me on the side of a road. But it really does, those are the major two places. And then you have like Waterbury, but we don't really have, Connecticut is a very, very small state. So it's not like you have these large cities within the state. The state is small. So the cities are small. You can't get lost. Just keep making a right. Wherever you are, just keep making a right turn. Don't even worry about it. So it's really small that way, but it's beautiful though. I mean, that's why people want to live here because it is a fabulous state. And I'm glad I'm here during this pandemic because people here love their money. So they're not trying to die. Okay? No, they're not. So when you say put on a mask, 99.9%, you may have one or two out, even the Trumpers here put on masks because they love their money. Okay? So no, really, that's the kind of state it is. It's all about economics. It's about social economics, about where your zip code is. It's about what kind of car you drive, your summer home, your regular home, your boat, your dog. Okay. I'm just telling you, so you want to know about Connecticut, and I'm telling you, it's not that interesting. There's no art, there's no culture.
I get it. Rick?
Well, I'm from Queens, New York, which is not considered New York City by people living in Manhattan. Where do you live? Queens. I live in the city. Oh, where? Flushing. That's not the city. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's my feel about class wars in America.
Yes.
Is that it's not only segregated by race, and especially the northern cities that are so progressive are the most segregated in America. Look at New York City, you're like, wait, you're in the subway on the 7 train. I'm in Flushing, I'm the only white guy, everybody's Asian. Then at Woodside, everybody's Hispanic. Then at Astoria, everybody's like me all of a sudden. Until we get to Brooklyn, where again, I'm the only white guy. And I'm like, wait, that's very shocking. That's New York City.
No.
So, I have a friend who always say, we go to work to the same place, but we go home to different neighborhoods at night.
Yes.
Yeah.
The North is very segregated, very segregated. Northeast, people don't really understand that. And they say, well, we live in the North, is the land of the free. No, it's not. It's very segregated. First by color and culture or culture and both, and then money. And here in Connecticut, it's money, it's the ruler. Nothing else counts.
I'm Lola Michelle Odom. I am located outside the city in Brooklyn, New York. and I lived a lot of years in New Jersey, pretty much on the other side of the water. But when I came to New York, at one point, I was working at this organization in Brooklyn, and I noticed that they would say, well, I'm going to go into the city today. And I was like, wait, What? So as a New Jersey person, you know, we say we're going to the city. But I didn't realize that New Yorkers also make that same kind of distinction. So that's pretty interesting. And Venita, you know, if we look at all of the topics going on in this chapter, then it sounds to me like you may have less emerging diseases going on in Connecticut than we have in some parts of the city, just based on the you know density and conditions. Yeah.
Yes. And also too, because I think they don't want the untouchables to affect the touchables, that they tend to take care of the untouchables. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, although it's socioeconomics, still, because you have so many of the wealthier people, you know, and because it is a small place, and we do have freedom of movement, they tend to take care of the so-called untouchables, the poor people, because they don't want the poor people affecting the wealthy people. And it's probably, and I'm being honest, that's the way I feel. That's my feeling. And it's easier to manage that because it's a small state.
Yeah.
And you know, when you talk about epidemics, I noticed something. So HIV was suspect bush hunters in the 30s in what was called Congo, but you know, it was a colony,
Right.
not a. So we suspect that because they were eating green monkeys near the Great Lakes, they got into contact, prolonged contact with HIV, which is a natural occurring disease in this monkey, but it was so over time it adapted to human bodies by consumption. You see the same disease we saw at the beginning of the book in Bolivia. It was linked to cattle. It was linked to how the land. So what I noticed is also cardiovascular diseases are horrible in America. And when I was really in a bad place financially, I remember the only thing you can eat here and feel full are 5 for 5 meals at Wendy's or stuff like that that are not good for your health at all and will kill you. And you're too poor to pay for healthcare. So it gets even worse.
Yes.
Noticing this, it's like all those pure, you know, these hipsters that talk about purity and veganism in a way that I respect veganism, but their way is not about animals. It's about them. It's about being pure themselves.
Right.
And you feel that that's a class thing, that they despise the white quote unquote trash guy or the black guy. They don't say it because they don't want to be racist, that eats, you know, fried food because that's cheap and it keeps you full.
Yes.
But it makes you sick. And I noticed epidemics happen in countries where nutrition is from the start a problem. I'm not talking about starvation. I'm talking about just a problem to access, like in Africa, to access potable water and the weekly. That's why women there can wear stuff on their head, because they have to walk 40, 50 miles to get rice.
Yes.
So food in all countries where food is not a commodity, diseases appear.
Yes.
I don't get sick. I get food easily. And it's been cleaned up. And it, you know, we don't realize. And so I'm thinking, you know, you were talking about Connecticut. I know a lot of people, white people, go to Connecticut to connect with nature again.
Well, they do. They
yeah, well,
yes.
Real nature is brutal. It's not nature, it's purified. It's a garden. So, you know.
Well, let's let me finish the introduction and say that we are in cluster 1, meaning this is the first book that we're reading under the Reading for Change banner. We are reading The Coming Plague, Newly Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance by Laurie Garrett. And you heard our critique of it at the beginning. We're about 1/3, I'd say, into the book. Big book, about 600 or so pages. So Maybe things will change as we go along, but I think we've got her number now. And we started our reading on this book on August 26th, and we'll be here through the end of February. You can learn more about Reading for Change on our Facebook page, where we have invitations to watch, or you can contact us about joining the discussions, or on YouTube, where we house all of our videos. So tonight we are on chapter 7 in Zara, Lassa, Ebola, and the developing world's economic and social policies. And, you know, just to further illustrate what our critique at the beginning, to me, you name a chapter in Zara, and then you don't talk about it until the last 2 pages, and you barely have anything to say. And, you know, just kind of misleading stuff like that. But anyway, let me go on and read the summary. Chapter 7 in Zara, Lassa, Ebola, and the developing world's economic and social policies is a wide-ranging chapter that follows Joe McCormick over a 3-year period in the late 1970s. He sets up a lab in Sierra Leone to conduct research on Lassa fever and fights Ebola in the Sudan during this period, where he also takes over Carl Johnson's post at the CDC as chief of the Special Pathogens Branch. The bulk of Chapter 7, however, explores the challenges to science of working in underdeveloped nations, particularly in Africa. A plethora of complex issues define the relationship between economics and health, including the scope of infectious disease in Africa, the negative impact of foreign aid on Africa's public health, and the relationship between political instability and disease in Africa and underdeveloped nations worldwide. Scientists, academics, and public health advocates disagree on the precise reasons parasitic and bacterial diseases emerge in human populations. At one extreme is the World Bank's view that economic development leads to improved public health. Academics at the opposite extreme, taking a historical view, argue that economic development leads to disease emergence. In the middle stand global monopolies and corrupt governments gobbling up natural resources and creating conditions of poverty and war that lead to environments where microbes thrive, and the United Nations, with its humane, if overly optimistic assertions that people matter too. Health is a human right. Yeah, that kind of cracked me up.
That laughter sounds like a Republican hearing about that. What? Healthcare is a human right, and there you go. And that's dramatic that we laugh at it because we know how many countries really, don't recognize that.
They don't recognize it here. What are you talking about?
Oh, China, they don't recognize it. They officially recognize it as a human right, but you have different health insurances, public health insurances, and you have one that is called urban and one rural. Guess who can afford even 1 year of generics under the rural? China, and if you complain, the same thing for other countries. India, it's not a human right, health there, depending on your case. I know cases are illegal, but we all know Russia, it's officially a human right. Good luck if you're near a radioactive area. So it's strange because it's like only in the end, Australia, continental Europe, Japan, that and England that actually have a human right based healthcare system, Mexico to Cuba
Mm-hmm.
of all countries, and Latin America. But when you think about it, the Anglo-Saxon countries don't really have that. I mean, America doesn't. Canada, yeah, only America, China, and Russia. Oh, dictatorships.
Oh yeah. And what? Give us an example.
Oh, but I mean, America, Russia, and China are dictatorships.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, America, I don't believe anymore it's a democracy because,
It's not.
It's not.
stuff
It's
happening.
not. And it never
Yeah.
has been a democracy. And that was all invisible and make believe, like money is invisible.
Well, it is.
It's not a
Strangely enough.
democracy. I was really what really took me aback is we were the if you understand how the World Health Organization works and who heads it, going by your economic power. And the United States is supposedly the wealthiest economic power. Therefore, we head the World Health Organization. Now,
Yes.
keep that in your head because a lot of people don't know that. Is that we do head the World Health Organization. The purpose of the World Health Organization is what? And what are we lacking here? So when I look at all these things, I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. It doesn't make sense to me. We're the head of the World Health Organization, and the World Health Organization is an organization that maybe has, I don't know, 136, 139 members, a whole bunch of them. You got some of them, a few places that are members, But then it goes by how much money you have, you pay dues, and that means not where you're writing a check. It's a different type of dues. And whomever has the most economic power, the most money, is the one who heads it. How can you even fix your face? That's why it's so disgusting to say that we head the World Health Organization, and we have people in our country that live like third world countries. And you don't have to go far. You can get your car and go right upstate New York, and you would think you in Ethiopia. Parts of Ethiopia is third world country. You can go down here in the city and see the same exact thing. You're looking down here in the city where Stop and Shop and all the major food stores do not want to go, okay? So there is no food down there. There's no healthy food, but every McDonald's, which I haven't ate a fast food place since, what is that? Aaron's 43. I haven't ate a fast food restaurant in 40 years. 40 years of any kind. 40 years. I almost died once. I'm like, no. But that's what they'll put down in the underserved neighborhoods. Now, even with that, the World Health Organization, they fund infrastructure, all kinds of stuff. Our country is falling apart. Every time you go on the highway and you look up, I'm telling you, I do not stop on the underpasses. I will not sit my car underneath one, or even too much, before one. You look up, it'd be like this much room, a half a mile between me and the next car, because I'm looking up and our infrastructure is falling down. So when I look at all the concerns of some of our citizens, which I think they're pretty lethargic, not just because of Corona, they've always been lethargic, obviously, it's disgraceful. It really is disgraceful, because we're not living any better than them. Having health insurance is not a human right here.
But I think you touched a point. I don't know if you ever watched that movie, Lord of War, with Nicolas Cage. It's actually a good one.
Yes.
And there's a scene where he's bringing in weapons.
Yes.
But he's got to go through customs and stuff. So what they use a WHO airplane. They pay the people, and the first part of the cargo is only medicines. So that part goes into one truck, and behind you have all the weapons, and the dictator's there. It's Charles Taylor being parodied, and he's like, Nicolas Cage, like, where is all the water and stuff going? Oh, we're selling it to the troops fighting for us in Sierra Leone. We're in Liberia, so we finance them through that. So that's why there's so much money that's been invested, because whatever people say, and that's why in dictatorships, humanitarians are kidnapped or even held hostage, because they know that usually spies go through those systems. And that's why, for example, Doctors Without Borders over vets them, because they don't want to spy among them, because a spy means that people won't trust you anymore to help them. And it happens a lot. And the IMF, we were talking about how disgusting they can be. Graeber died recently. I don't know if you know that author. He was the Occupy Wall Street
Yes.
brainchild, pretty much. He wrote a book called Debt, and the first chapter, the introduction is he's at a party with a lot of rich people. He's like a sort of, there, and there's this lady telling him, "Oh, you need to date that girl." So she's like a little drunk, and he's like, "She's an advocate for human rights." So he's like, "Oh, so what do you think about the IMF and what they did in Madagascar?" And she's like, "What? What's the IMF?" So she didn't even know that. So he explained to her that Madagascar was invaded by my nation, France. And because we were bringing civilization after slaughtering a lot of people, we contracted debts in the name of the Madagascar people to reimburse us for our invasion.
That's right.
We did that. And that debt to this day holds.
That's right.
That's right. France is still rich. We're getting money from Africa for free. And the thing is, because Madagascar could not pay interest
the
rates.
same situation in Haiti, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Now in
Many
Haiti, no,
African
it was not to reimburse. It was to reimburse us for being the first white nation to be repelled by
Right.
black people that were armed with nothing compared to us. In terms of, it was humiliating. So we had this debt as we didn't really lose, sore losers. So, but the horrible part of that is that they repaid the debt, even that horrible, idiotic debt, several times. But with the interest rate and the IMF, they can't get even. So the problem is that the IMF was like, you know what? We're going to talk to the WHO. We're going to tell them they should not finance your malaria program anymore, because you're not paying. 16,000 kids died.
Yeah.
So this is how disgusting, and this is why nobody respects the UN, WHO, or NATO. We know who they are,
That's right. And they're all banquet to thieves. Devils. Can you hear that, Rick? Can you hear the timer when it goes off?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because sometimes I didn't want to turn up too loud, to be distracting. If you need more time, we have in the future, anytime, because we have something interesting to say. I don't want you to stop in the middle of your thought, because I want to hear everything Rick has to say. So what we're doing is we're setting a timer for 3 minutes apiece. When you hear the buzzer go off, if you need more time, you can act like you have to send a hearing and say, well, you know what, can I have 2 more minutes? Because the maximum is 2 minutes. Or can I have 1 more minute? And I'll say, yes, we're going to yield that gentleman over there another minute or another 2. Okay?
That doesn't sound very presidential.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, the vice presidents only got 2 minutes to say what they had to say, which I thought was really harsh. But I have two thoughts I want to add, and I probably can't do them both in 3 minutes. So I might need 5 minutes here.
We're going to start right now. Your 3 minutes start.
So the first thing I wanted to say was just picking up on what Rick was talking about, and as well as Venita's reference to the Untouchables. Of course, we're reading Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson in our other group. And, it's been kind of interesting for me to see how the 2 books kind of, flow together, have a relationship together. And so a part of the meat of Caste is these 8 pillars that hold up caste systems in various parts of the world. She specifically is focused on comparing caste in the United States, Nazi Germany, and India. And so there are a lot of parallels there. But there are also a lot of parallels to specifically this chapter, you know, and the kinds of conditions that we were reading about. And so what Rick was talking about, never being able to work your way out of debt. So, but I just want to say that so last night I was saying, you know, really it's like there's this bag of tricks. Call them the 8 pillars, call them whatever, but there's this bag of tricks. And they just get replicated with slightly different names in different locations over time around the world. And so this thing about, you know, being caught in debt as a nation is very much like the sharecropping system that existed for so long here in the United States.
Exactly.
And that's the trap. But it's a trap. It worked before. It works on this location. It'll work someplace else. So that's point one. How much time do I have?
31 seconds. You got 28 now.
All right, I just want to read this part because it picks up on what Venita was talking about earlier. I am at the bottom of page 220 going on to 221. McCormick was at a loss for a solution. Once again, elimination of a disease threat seemed inextricably bound to economics and development. The poverty of Southern Sudan exceeded anything he had seen before, and McCormick had little reason to hope that some government or agency, one more minute, with the wherewithal to do so, would deem it politically expedient to assist such godforsaken parts of the planet. ... Out of such poverty, from the African Serengeti to the burned out tenements of the Bronx, would soon come microbial invasions that would bear out McCormick's prophecy. So just the linkage that she's making between all of this underdevelopment that we just read about in Africa and the Bronx.
And the Bronx.
Yeah, was pretty striking.
That's why I read that and I was like, Bronx, oh, that's down the street.
Yes.
You know, but I can see that happening because again, we are living in parts of our country more so than ever today, like we are in third world countries, even without the corona. You know, if you went down to certain areas of our country, people have outside plumbing. People are living in shacks. They're living on, I've seen them with my own 2 eyes because when we go places, we always, my husband and I, we don't want to be tourists. So we go all up in there, you know, because I can see downtown Savannah on television or on the internet. I want to go up, down in there, you know, and we saw some stuff, well, probably about 13 years ago. And I've been down south many times that you wouldn't believe. I had to stop for a minute and really try to see if I was still in the United States of America. I went upstate New York and saw stuff up there that you had to stop and say, are we, aesthetically they're rich because it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But let me tell you, I had to really figure out where I was. That determined that Aaron was not going to go to Colgate, which is a wonderful university. That determined that. That was part of it along with it being remote. And it's nothing to do. And what else can you do but some dope all day between studying and doing dope? Because there ain't nothing else to do. Okay. But really, I'm just, the point is that it is really, I don't know how we can fix our faces to act like we are so above everyone else when right here we are living like a third world country, and that's disgraceful. There's a lot of people living that way, but then you have the opposite end. There's no middle anymore. I hate to tell it middle class people because they get all out of sorts when you say that. Because it used to be the American dream to get to the middle class, you know, and do all the BS. There is no middle class anymore. Write that down. Okay, start your nightmares now. Take your Valium, smoke your weed, get your scotch. Now, if you still can afford some Chevy Regal, and get it through your head that there's no middle class anymore. It's gone. You are now the working poor if you got a job today. And that's going to be a huge issue coming November the 3rd. And that's part of the issue anyway, is that falling, that losing that grip on that fictitious thing that you had in your head that they put in your, that you were some, it's over. Anyway, that wasn't a very positive note, but I really would like people to start, grasp I have. That I'm like one step from being hungry. So, we really have to.
To your point, earlier you said America is not a democracy. The strange thing about America, it is a democracy if you're an owner.
Well,
if you own stuff, property. And by property, I don't mean a mortgage. I mean property.
Yeah, big property.
There's a that's the lie to the middle class. We were talking about that. Oh, you're an owner. No, you're not. No. They can take your house anytime.
Anytime.
You lose an apartment because you're a renter. Okay, you rent another one. But this is money you lost forever. And on top of everything, you can't rent anymore because you're a bad payer, bad credit. So it's all a trap. I remember when I got unemployed at, you remember what company, not to do any advertising. I received, so for years in America, they didn't want to give me a credit card. They gave me one with like $100 on it, like build your credit. Oh, okay. When I got unemployed, I received several letters every day offering me a credit card. Yes. 1 year without fees. And of course, they knew I was unemployed because they have access to Social Security data.
Yes.
So again, one of their tricks. And you were talking about, the fact that some places here, what really shocks Europeans when I bring them to the South, like I got some family near Greenville, but they have a cabin in the mountains. So I know what's outside of the beautiful city. And when white Europeans see how white Americans live in those regions, they're like, wait, it's like Africa. I'm like, you got a point here, because that's the thing. Racism in America is necessary to white people so that they can think poverty is Black. They're not poor. It's just temporary. They're just millionaires that are having, some bad moments, but it's coming when they're 50 or 60, and they always name idiots like that. My pillow guy, who was a crackhead in the 2000s and had a dream of course, a crackhead dream of a good pillow he would use, and he was already in his 50s. He was such a crackhead, he had an intervention from his dealer, a drug dealer. Yeah, no, it's a true story. You got to read about the My Pillow guy. He's a Trump supporter, and I read about him extensively because I thought it was a joke. He was a crackhead. He was a crackhead.
Bonafide.
But so severe, and so he came up with that pillow, but he was in his 50s, 60s already. So these idiots look up to this guy and say, yeah, I'm on meth. Yeah, I'm sick. I'm not having enough money and whatnot. I'm not educated, but I'm not Black, so I'm not poor.
That's it.
And that's the function in America of racism. That's why even progressives, they want to help Black people. The white savior in those movies. I would love a realistic movie about that. That would be so fun. You can't help these kids. They won't listen. Because there's still this myth among white people that Black people are poor intellectually, financially, and should be helped or hated for it. But never, no, they're just people. Stop, just stop getting involved in trying to save people you don't know or hate people you don't know. But yeah, and to the point of diseases, this medical omerta on Black people in America and other countries is white women are always right when they suffer, but Black women always exaggerate. Black men, they eat fried chicken. That's normal. They have cardiovascular problems. They're not serious. It's always making different people look like children that need to be educated. And if they get hurt, well, it's a lesson. It's really, and you feel that about diseases too. Coronavirus, it's the blue states, which means minorities, immigrants, they're corrupt. That's why they got contaminated. And you hear that all the time in America. This, it's not even white privilege, it's white dominion. I think it's not even a privilege, it's clear power. It's clear, it's not I'm given stuff, is I take stuff, I'm allowed. So, and even
Uh,
healthcare.
uh, uh,
Yep.
Absolutely.
you need more time, Rick?
No, I was finished.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm
let's
sorry.
let's look at the three questions. What, if anything, did you learn in this week's readings? What was the most interesting thing to you? And what discussion starters do you have?
Excuse me.
We only actually don't have a lot of time left. Anything stood out for you?
Just one thing for me, which is oftentimes a good book loses track of itself because it tries, I think she's trying in that chapter, and it talks to the point of caste. I think she's talking to academics who might criticize her book and be like, you didn't take into account all factors. And so it's very dry, and you feel she's talking to somebody else than the reader, the authority. And it's a strange thing that she talks about how authority can bring forth diseases, but at the same time is so reverent towards it. And also something else, I think both sides are right. Civilization and development leads to the extinction of diseases, but those that already existed, but it leads to the surge of brand new diseases that could not have been possible without a city, without class wars, racial wars. So I think it's like a horrible cycle where civilization gives you the impression it improves your life, which it does, of course, potable water, whatnot. So diseases disappear. So there's a time where you think, oh, we can destroy all pathogens, and then because of the new conditions, new diseases appear. And so at first people say it's not possible. We've destroyed diseases. So that's what I learned pretty much, is that this cycle seems to happen all the time.
Absolutely. Venita, anything striking to you?
There are a lot of striking things in this chapter.
There's so much, right?
Yes. One that I also, it made me pause. When Archbishop Ludwig was executed by Idi Amin. And the radio station, whatever that might have been, well, it was pretty, they had radio stations. In Tanzania, I guess the host went on to say, if Africa's states condemn white minority rule in South Africa and Rhodesia, then they must also condemn the atrocities committed in Black ruled states. That gave me pause. Because Idi Amin was a Black African. In every way. And we put a heavy hand on racism all the time. And we know it's deserving. Because it definitely is there. It glares. But the thought of power that overrules all of that, and he is a Black man doing that to Black people. It just makes me really sad. And and again, it's not something I've learned. It's just every time I read something like that, it's just so sad when, we have so many things that we're fighting all the time. We're fighting racism in white society, but also we're fighting our own that's killing us for power.
Yeah, but two things. One, that's what Europeans have been allowed to do to each other for centuries without being slaughtered by humanitarian interventions of other countries. You got to go the course of your history. The problem is that these dictators are also pawns, a lot of them, of foreign powers. And so, I think it's like the black on black and white on white stuff, crimes. I think it's not necessarily. I understand it saddens you, but I think unfortunately we should never forget that Africa is the playground of foreign powers, and that what happens there is never innocent. It's very rare. I mean, except for Sankara, who was assassinated because he was truly committed to changing things and telling the West, we don't need you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No violence. Oh, so he got shot. They tried to assassinate Gaddafi when he was a good guy, so he became paranoid and that kind of guy. Mobutu, same thing, became lazy, trying to exploit his people.
Yeah.
Mugabe, same thing, got really old. And I think that down the line, when you look at all of these guys, it's Europe has done the same to its own people. And I think you're right, it's human nature. But racism in epidemics and in Africa makes it impossible to determine if Africans, if left finally alone, how long it would take them to come back. Because we always like, oh, if we don't intervene, like in France for Central Africa, there will be a genocide. And I want to say something horrible. We had genocides in Europe. Nobody stopped us. And we had to go through our history, and that was our fight. At one point, could you please stop intervening in everybody's history because you're not making things better? Look at Syria, look at Iraq.
Yeah.
It's not making things better.
Yeah.
It's not helping.
Yeah, well,
yes, the genocide is horrible, but we didn't intervene in Rwanda. Why? There's nothing there. We need it. So we let them kill 1 million human beings in 1 month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I know everything is politics. That's obvious. And I know they're pawns. That's also obvious. Because we have pawns here that will do anything. They would turn to
Yes.
for any reason or no reason. You know. But still, being a Black person, it makes me sad.
Yeah, but
it just makes me sad. I know all the other things exist, but it still makes me sad.
Of course.
It's like, well, you don't have a chance in hell.
Yeah, that particular passage was also striking to me, Venita.
Yeah, it just made me sad.
But similar, to what you guys are saying, I had to think about the fact that so many of these countries had just gained independence. They were just coming out of the colonial process, and even though African nations had existed for centuries, and knew how to govern themselves and feed themselves and all of this, there was this devastating period of colonialism that parallels the experience of chattel slavery, in the timeline. And just as Black Americans coming right out of slavery, or Black Americans today still dealing with the legacy of slavery, that same kind of thing was happening to African nations. So I think some of the time that we don't want to criticize each other, it's not that we don't recognize the wrongness in a certain behavior. But so many.
You're frozen. You're breaking up.
I'm frozen.
Well, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
No, you're back. You're back.
Yeah.
I'm back. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some level, it's like picking your battles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
That was
You know, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Michelle. It is sad, but there's something that um, in France, I grew up with people from Ivory Coast, Senegal. First of all, these nations didn't exist before. They're just the colonial map that's been pretty much kept as it was. So, surprise, there are civil wars between, they're not civil wars, they're wars between different nations that happen to be on the same land they weren't supposed to be originally. So, number one. But number two, so I grew up with guys, and there's a big difference. Africans, Arabs, Europeans, we kind of get along because we come from the same civilization area, and implicitly we understand we have the same values, even if you want to admit it, about the ancient world, might, etc., territory, whatever. In African Americans are a unique culture because you guys are incredible. Look at what you said, Vanita, and you, Michelle. You thought what he did was disgusting. Well, Africans and Europeans, we see might. We see a man of power doing what a king should do. What we have this toxic mentality, the old world, about this very ancient barbaric time where we had kings, and we're raised from Africa to Europe with the idea of heroes. But heroes are violent, brutal, that conquer, take over, have several women. Conan. But it's true of all these old continents, even Asia. So when you find a nation like African Americans that does not want to take revenge, where everybody else in Europe thinks you guys should go on the slaughter of white people just because that's what we would do. Well, it makes you pause and realize, wait, there is a nation of a refinement that was born between the 19th and 20th century that created jazz, steroids, NASA, because we never talked about that, and they don't want revenge. And they don't want to be vindicated. They just want to be left alone. Who are these people? And that's why everybody listens to only Black music outside of America. I mean, jazz, rock, blues. It's, Michael Jackson was super popular in countries where they're usually super racist. So what I'm saying is just, I think, Vanita, there is an African American nation, and it's very different from every other nations in the world. I think it's unique, and that's why people don't acknowledge it enough. I think that people
Well,
always look at it as
if I may say so, they acknowledge the villain, but I'm going beyond the villain. I'm talking about the people. There's a good essay, and one of my favorites by Orson Welles, it's called Marrakesh, that he wrote during his travels through Morocco. And it's all, again, there's that word desensitize. I don't care about Idi Amin. I could care less. There's Idi Amin's living next door to me. The Idi Amin's in my family. The Idi Amin's all over the place at the grocery store. I'm talking about that we have blinded ourselves. We have actually turned our heads to the point where, just like the people of Marrakesh, through Orson Welles' writings in his travels, that is a brown piece of matter. We don't even see them anymore. I'm saddened about the people. I'm not shocked by Idi Amin or anyone like him. I know, we know those things. They exist everywhere. It saddens me. I stopped to acknowledge in the people. They do matter. They're not just a piece of brown matter broken down to little particles of dust. They actually do matter. And because we so always, the conversation about the villain, it's almost like the people that have died under these extreme barbaric circumstances. We're desensitized. No one, what about them?
Yeah,
that's what makes
else.
me sad. That's what makes me sad.
And what saddens me even more.
I'm not criticizing Idi Amin. I got Idi Amin's all over. Like I said, my family next door to me, they're at the PTA meeting, they're all over. I don't care about criticizing anyone. I'm not there to critique you. No, I know the world has evil. It's the people that seems to be forgotten. And because we can dismiss them and almost blind ourselves to them like they don't matter, we can go on with our lives and it happens over and over and over, which is why Donald Trump is about ready to do the same thing.
But I'm thinking about Beast of No Nation, Michelle.
Yes.
These horrific dictators in Africa and in every other country, originally they were children too, victims of war that were desensitized to the point of becoming psychopaths. And I think this is the thing that people don't want to look at reality is that I when some people tell me children are so innocent, I was a child. No, they're not. They're animals. They will. I mean, we all were in high, in primary school, middle school. They can be ruthless, and adults and educators are here to tell children, do not punch, do not do that. You can't do that. But if you're in the middle of a war zone and you lose your parents, and the first guy you meet gives you an AK-47 and says, "Hey, kid, you're gonna go on the vengeance spree with us," you become that. And I think we should never underestimate the fact that what makes reality so difficult to cope with is you meet dictators that are actually very nice when you have a glass with them. And reality is that horror of realizing that who can you trust to be good? Because when you meet people, they're all cool. And I don't know, it saddens me that we live in a world where people don't want to look at complexity as a challenge that's worthy of undertaking. And instead of, we want vengeance. Oh, the dictator is horrible, let's kill him. Okay, what next? He's dead. But the problem is still there in this country. They still have the same problems. Like when
Yes.
people say, if I can go back to time, I'll kill Hitler. And I'm like, well, another one will come. It's not, it's part of, the
Yeah, and
factors.
I wanted to add along that line. I heard about a book recently called A Better Man by Michael Ian Black, who I think is a white guy. And it's a letter to his son. But he's dealing with this whole strong man image, grappling with it and trying to figure out how we can give better messages to little boys. And so he describes Donald Trump as, being the quintessential image of the strong man. And so, along the lines of what you were saying, Rick, hopefully on November 3rd, we are going to rid ourselves of that particular monster. But it's not going to rid us of the underlying problem that brought him to power in the first place. That is a much more complex set of issues going on. And I just want to say to Rick, I'm not so sure that Black people don't want revenge. All of us are not as forgiving as some of us are, particularly the more religious among us tend to be quick to want to forgive. But there are many more of us these days that are not so religious, and I think more than just a high spirituality, I think more the logistics of what's involved in just, I don't think it's a matter of Black people wanting revenge. I don't ever think it's been about that. But Black people would like to live in peace. Black people would like to walk down the street, without, on the turn of a dime, having the shit choked out of them for no good reason. We would like to live in peace. And that seems to be a nearly impossible state to be in with people who seem so predisposed to warlike behavior constantly for no reason. And so I think that when I say the logistics, it's a matter of, we don't want to just be slaughtered. What we want is to live in peace. So the question is, how do you make that happen? Do we have to go to another country, just like we're reading about Africa? Just because you're in your own country doesn't mean people leave you the fuck alone. So what does it take to live in peace on this earth with people of that warlike spirit?
And you're talking about that, but again, the strange thing that you notice in Europe, Arabs recently attacked a precinct 40 at night with mortars. They've been doing that for 30 years, and I participate in some because it's tradition in France to attack the cops. We don't like them. They've never been there for good reasons. And the thing is, we don't care if they slaughter us. Even in Europe, the mentality, that toxic masculinity mentality you find in Africa, Europe, is let's wish they shoot us. So that then afterwards, when blood is drawn, we are allowed to slaughter everybody. And it's horrible, but I can give you teenagers saying that at 14 while rioting or demonstrating. So it's this ultra violence that's very barbaric and part of the ancient world and still lives to this day in America has disappeared in the African American nation, because even people who have hatred and want to slaughter people, there were some, but they're all ex-military, and they went out because they thought the police were terrorists in the end, and the guy in Houston, but they're isolated. They're not coordinated, because I don't see the African American communities in America accepting that people would come together to attack other people. And that's and the huge thing that you notice is that white people believe that will happen one day, but
I believe it too.
Never happened in 2 centuries.
Yeah, I believe it too.
2 minutes.
We were having this kind of conversation about people weaponizing themselves last night, and everybody in the group except me was talking about how they've gone out and purchased guns, because ever since Obama was elected, all we hear about is how all the white people have bought up all the guns on the planet, can't get ammunition if you wanted it.
It's a real problem. I'm telling you, it's a real problem. And I was the only one that was kind of saying, I get how you can take out a few people, but it's not clear to me that we really understand the depth of evil that we're dealing with here. And with the kinds of bombing, the kinds of destruction that this country has visited upon other nations in our name, what makes us think those chickens are not going to come home to roost? They have to. Well, they have.
I think that
it's Russia.
I believe they meant immediate danger.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's what I meant. I meant immediate danger. I know that, we have armies. The government controls our army. They can drop bombs or whatever they want to at any given time. I'm talking about immediate danger. Like, my neighbors tell me they have arsenals, and I know they do. Saturday morning, get in the car, go to the range, outdoor range, because they're not using just pistols. No, they're using AKAs. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about. Just to be able, if somebody tries to come in my home, to hurt me, I can attempt to protect myself, because that will happen before the bombs drop.
Yeah.
November the 3rd, if something's going to happen, it's going to be from your neighbors. It's going to be from the people around you long before a bomb's going to drop on you. and they're not playing. No one wants to, be. I'm not a violent person, but I'm sitting there and every day I live in a predominantly all white neighborhood for 30-something years. And you tell me about your guns, there's gonna be a civil war, and they say it like that, no problem. Then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Black folks are always sitting back on the peace, but I'm the only person that don't have a peace.
Yeah, and for me,
I got to write this down.
It's,
I'm sending that to a friend who writes
it's not for me. It's not just about the peace, but like if you think about, I forget what country it was, Tanzania, someplace like that, where the exiled leader was about to go back and take power in his nation in this chapter, and he really had a lot of hesitancy about it because he was saying, all these children have known is war and rape. There's no morality to speak of. I'm asking the unanswerable question of, what kind of world do we want to live in? And, and what is it? What is it that we need to be doing to try to create that world? Because it seems to me that so much of what we're doing is creating conditions that for the majority of human beings are just unlivable.
And the problem
but you're not going to change who. I don't believe that you can. There'll be people that will and recognize and embrace the errors of their horrible ways and thoughts. But for the most part, you're in the United States of America. You're not going to teach these white people nothing. Okay? It's innate. It's just, it's always going to be that power struggle. Basically, being Black, I'm just trying to get to survive the next 4 years. Since I was able to vote since 18 years old, I'm voting to survive the next 4 years. I don't see where, it's just, I think we're too far gone. There's no values. I mean, you're not going to teach them. I mean, I think we should, the grown and older people know you got to start with the babies, and you can't start with them. It's hard to start with them because they have to still live in their environment of generation to generation. And grandma's over there and grandpa, and they think that way. Aunt's over there and auntie, and they think that way. I just don't understand.
Well,
and I know you say you're talking about the 500-year plan, but even a 500-year plan, first of all, I don't think we're going to be here for 500 years. That's the first thing.
You will, but there
We're
is.
not going to make it.
I think things are turning around because there's one thing you said that works, unfortunately, really well, and Lincoln made a huge mistake. He gave the impression that racist people didn't really know what they were doing, and in the end, they were probably good people, and we're not gonna punish them even more. And they thrived 3 years later. The KKK was founded, 4 years after the Civil War. I mean, slavery was abolished, but that was it, and everything else was still around. So the status was abolished, but the way people were treated was pretty much the same, except you were allowed to walk outside of the plantation. But when you think about it, there was nothing more. When the Nazis wrecked Europe, we burned down their cities and we punished the German people. And I know a lot of people say it's a crime. It is. We burned down Dresden in one night. 500,000 people died. Civilians. And they were traumatized. But till this day, the Germans, only now will you have far-right parties coming back. It took them 80 years. And unfortunately, this is what history has taught us. When people are evil, you break them. You don't tell them war is over. You were criminals who raped massively and slaughtered massively, because that's not war. War goes with slaughter. There's a difference between killing people in battle, and it's horrible, And during a war or before a war, slaughtering people in apparently a time of peace. These people need to be crushed. They're bullies. And unfortunately, you're asking Michelle, how can we do? It's there's this story, and I'll finish with that. In Bosnia, they were slaughtering a lot of people, and this French general had had enough and said, "We know they're coming to this village," and he was under a mission order from NATO. Don't move. Do only move if this and that. He got fed up with the order. He asked two jet fighters to just fly over the caravan of fighters coming to slaughter a village. They pulled back. They didn't even fight. They didn't need to. And he saved 300 people. He was dismissed. But that
Yeah.
works. When you show muscles to a bully, they calm down.
They do.
But you have to break them.
I
And
agree.
it's
I
terrible.
agree. And and Black folks around the world are not very unified because divide and conquer strategies have been so effective. But people of color make up the uh, majority of the world's population. If we got it in our minds to just slaughter white people, it could be done. My concern, though, is that still doesn't solve the problem because the sort of um, the ideas, the culture, the thinking of capitalism, and all of that has become a part of us too. So it's very complex stuff. But I just, I've had this conversation with Venita and my women friends and the other book group, but I haven't talked to you, Rick, about those white guys that tried to take over wanted to lynch Governor Whitmer in Michigan.
By the way, one of them is a metalhead. It happens I'm a metalhead. And so we know his name for the metal scene. No, the guy is a dum-dum. Not only is he a metalhead, and you would say, that's kind of conspicuous if you go out kidnapping somebody because of all your tattoos and whatever. But when he was doing his videos, we have a screenshot of him with an anarchy poster behind you. Like, wait, you're far right. Why do you? Oh, you know nothing. You're a 4chan idiot. And this is where it's terrible. You see idiots, and thank God they were idiots because they were so moronic. They were communicating through social media. Thank God. So she was saved by how moronic they were. But no, these guys. I think the real problem was not the lockdown. It was emanating from a woman. And I'm not saying sexism is just that, well, we're getting orders from this bee, well,
Right.
that kind of guy. But I wanted to tell you a story about what you were saying, the slaughtering. When they decided the final solution in Wannsee in 1941, January, the conference, they had all the Nazi people around to get an alignment. And the chancellor of the Reich, which is the prime minister, was absolutely against that. He was like, no, 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 I didn't sign up for that, blah, 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 blah. And they pretty much made him understand that if he wasn't to prove people are replaceable, they can be changed. So he accepted, and he went to Eichmann, the guy who was judged later in Israel, and told him, "Let me tell you a story. It's a son. He hates his father. He hates it, like ever. Always hated him, and he loves his mother. In all his years, his relationship with his dad destroys pretty much every ability he has to grow and to have a good job and to have a good relationship. And his mother dies when he's 30, and not a drop, not a tear. Okay. And his dad lives till he's like 50, and his dad's 90, and it made his life miserable. When his dad died, he could not stop crying and ended up dying of sadness. And so Eichmann, who's a real brutal Nazi, looks at the chancellor and says, "What's the moral? The moral is that be careful. Hate doesn't become the reason you live, because once the person you hated dies, you have no reason to live anymore." And it was about the Jewish people. You know, once we get rid of Jews, we'll realize we still hate each other. We still have
Exactly.
nothing. We'll find new Jews. You know, we'll try to find somebody else to kill. We'll never feel better and fulfilled by revenge, and not even revenge, hate at that point. So I just wanted to finish with that, with the fact that
Yeah.
killing
Yeah.
is not the solution, even when you feel it is the only one left.
Yeah, it's deep stuff, and and people figuring, and as I said, I think even if we killed all the white people, we still would have these issues, and it's really deep kind of soul work to figure out what it is going on with people. So in the book Cast, she starts out talking about what an arbitrary characteristic skin color is. It just so happened that's what the United States decided to use, to set up its caste system. But it could have been anything. It could have been people with blue eyes. It could have been people with brown hair. And so that's the thing. Once you kill off all of your, enemies, then what? Then what? If you got to figure that out, or there's no end to it. So, all right, guys, any final thoughts before we close?
Vote.
That's a good idea.
I'm still struggling to get confirmation because I've sent out my registration months ago, and they received the letter. I know, because I had the tracking on my phone, but I still can't find myself on the list. So I'm worried, because I try to call them, but they don't pick up. So, and I changed jobs, and I received my Cobra thing with 20-day delay, which is stupid because you've got 10 days. So I was like, oh, the postal services seem to. So I'm a little worried, to be honest with you. That's our vote this year, and I heard what's happening in Georgia. So I just want to be positive, but I'm thinking we should not give up just because he officially wins, if he wins. And I know.
Oh no, we don't have to give up because he's going to kill us. You don't have to worry about that.
Next time, and this time he knows there's no limit to the sky.
Well, no,
he can do whatever he wants.
That's what I'm telling you. If he is voted, people are voting for their lives. If that man is in that office, the disgusting pig that he is, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it.
And and just like I was talking about the chickens coming home to roost, the United States has been rigging elections in other people's countries for decades. It's what we do.
Yeah,
no,
it's what we do.
We did not rig elections. I'm sorry, Michelle. We did coup. It's faster. we literally replaced the guy in Iran in Chile by killing them.
Yes.
Rigged
So
elections.
if Joe Biden wins, he better run for his life.
No, but you know what would be incredible? They start fighting over who won, and they both die. We end up with Pence and Kamala Harris, and we'll be like, Kamala. Hey, it's my time.
No, all right, everybody, wear a mask, wash your hands. See you next week reading our story together. Have a great week.
Good night. Good night, Rick. Good night, Michelle.
Take care, Venita. Take care, Michelle. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
You too.